and them companies want their.
And a good Friday morning to you. We're coming on the air with some breaking news from the Supreme Court. The High Court has just declined to stop a ban of TikTok, now set to take effect on Sunday. TikTok is, of course, one of the most popular social media apps in this country, with some 170 million users in the U.S. alone, but the app is owned by a Chinese company, and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have said that it is a national security risk. Today's decision comes after the court heard arguments from TikTok against the law that essentially forces its parent company, ByteDance, to sell its operations here. Situation very fluid right now. Both the outgoing Biden administration and the incoming Trump administration, they've both said that they may try to keep the app going. Joined now by our senior legal correspondent, Laura Jarrett. So, Laura, let's just start with what this means, what it doesn't mean, and what happens next.
So no question a defeat for TikTok here. Obviously, the ban can go through, but there's a question mark about whether the law is actually going to be enforced, even though it was a bipartisan law passed by Congress, signed by President Biden.
Welcome back to the channel. Guys, I hope you're having a great evening. I know this is a period of time here where if you're a TikTok influencer, you're a TikTok platform, member of that community, that you've been under stress from this TikTok ban. So many of you all who watch the channel know I founded a social media company called Bitcoin MYK, right? On the home page, there's a description of what it's all about. So years ago now, I came up with the idea that social media is going to be how we make a living, right? That there was going to be automation robots everywhere. It was going to be remote people mostly working from home, things like that. That we're going to have advancements in artificial intelligence like ChatGPT, and that a lot of people were going to be displaced, right? And back then, when I came up with this idea, a lot of people just couldn't see it. They were saying that, no, you can't make money from social media. They thought the idea was ridiculous. And now what we have is, today we have a lot of people whose very livelihoods depend on social media platforms. This is how they make their living. This is how they make their money. Many of you all who are on YouTube are aware of, people who make millions of dollars putting out YouTube videos. And it's not just millionaires. It's not just the people who make millions that are able to compete media-wise with your big news networks, or even your top 10 television shows, right? These people on their platforms can get millions upon millions of views when basically, in essence, some of your best TV shows out there can only get like 600,000 views per episode, right? And imagine just Joe Schmo, who started a YouTube channel in his garage, he's knocking out 5 million views, per episode, right? Per whatever he's doing on YouTube, right? Of course, we know about all that. What we don't hear a lot about is the very small people, probably people like myself, and very small people who don't make a lot of money using YouTube and things like that, but they might make a part-time income, and so it creates an economy. Basically, it creates jobs for people, right? And so the very idea of this becomes quite significant now. Now you're talking about people's lives, you're talking about a lot of jobs, and you're talking about the entertainment value or whatever they get from these platforms like TikTok, right? Now, if, many of you all well know by now that what's happening with TikTok is a Chinese basically owned platform, right? And so let's explain a little bit, without going too far into detail, basically what the problem is with TikTok, right? So China, the way that it's set up is different from, of course, how business enterprises work in the United States, right? Uh, the idea behind China is that a lot of how businesses operate in China are very much interwoven and connected to their governments. And when you're dealing with data and information, right, on numbers and scales like this, um, where you could, in essence, have all the data and information on almost an entire nation of people. It's a lot of people on TikTok and these social networks, right? Some house almost the entire world population, right? So you have what could be potentially an enemy nation containing all the data of these people. But it goes a little bit further than that, guys. For those of you all who don't know, um, these super AIs that are being developed, whether they be something like Chat GPT or whatever the next generation of that could potentially end up being, they are data driven, right? These super AIs are driven by people and data. So the more data you got, the more pool of data, and the large scales of data, the more advanced the machine learning of these computers and systems can become, right? So this could, in a very science fiction like dystopian situation, or end of the world like scenario, it could create a situation where a nation like China creates a super AI that can basically create weapons further advanced than United States, or even technologies, and even whether it be energies or just ways to do things. They could be so far ahead of us that it could become a national security threat, right? And so if you don't do anything about it, that potential exists. Now we're already in a lot of trouble because on a mere fact that China has a great amount of people already, right? So that equals data, right? China already has billions of people, so it's likely at some point they will get ahead of us in this, right? The problem with TikTok is it doesn't make that any easier, right? And that's probably why back in 2020, even people like Trump, who they're hoping will basically, stop this ban, right? That's being held up still by the Supreme Court. Uh, they're hoping he will stop it, but more than likely, Trump's already aware of this. Trump in 2020 already wanted to ban TikTok. Now he seems to be sending out mixed messages about what he will do. He hasn't given a definitive message yet. Of course, we're concerned about the TikTok um, participants who depend on TikTok, right? Who lives have followed, TikTok to a great degree. Their incomes depend on it, and so that's a serious thing when your job's on the line. Comes back to what we did here with Bitcoin MYK, and our vision that, hey, these robots are going to take everybody, these machines are going to be so advanced. That's what's going to happen is people are going to be working from social media. They're going to be creating content. They're going to be getting paid from their data to themselves, right? And not a middleman or a company getting it first. They're going to own these networks and make the decisions on what happens to them. And they're going to be decentralized, meaning that they can't even be shut down by a government. Now, all of those things is what's happened with Bitcoin MYK. Now, when we look at things like automation, when we look at things like the control of these social networks, the control of your data, these are very important, life-changing, life-threatening situations that should be taken serious. On a level, this should rank right up there with nuclear proliferation. It should rank up there with climate change. It should rank up there with the job economy. This should all be there. Unfortunately, we haven't been educated about the severity of this. People who go to 9 to 5s, right? And look at people who work on social media, and they tend to look at these people as not having a job and such and things like that. These people haven't come to the realization yet that they're going to be at some point in the future replaced by robots, right? That how they define work and jobs in itself is going to change, right? They haven't come to terms with that. It hasn't hit them, right? They're oblivious to it, right? And that's why it's so dangerous, because they do not know, nor do they understand this. The problem with TikTok content influencers is they didn't understand this either, right? That they always needed networks like this together in a community, that they could create their own networks that they own and run themselves, that they're not run by people like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, right? Who, although are now making changes to the decentralization of to a degree, right? Because it's still, your data is still being controlled by them, but to the point, at least, your freedom of speech to a degree, right? They're trying to get to where we've been for the last several years, right? And it's unfortunate that all these things have to happen and people have to be harmed, right? To get it, right? And that's the unfortunate thing, that experience has to create learning for some. Users should have already been planning for this, right? On YouTube, many people know we had a similar incident with the apocalypse, right? That's when people weren't getting hardly any money or revenue for ads running on their site. They just weren't going to be able to make a living off of YouTube. What were they going to do? People want to leave YouTube as such, right? And we kind of survived that, right? But that's not saying it won't come back again. Now, here's the issue. Even in dealing with that, right, and facing that, people on YouTube, people on social media who depend on these platforms still haven't made the move to start to move their content to other platforms, right? To diversify their content. I'm not saying that if you're on TikTok, you shouldn't use TikTok, you shouldn't use Twitter, you shouldn't use Meta, you shouldn't use Instagram. What I'm saying is, if you're a content influencer and you're not posting on our social media, Bitcoin MYK, what that shows me is that you're not serious about the protection of your livelihood and content, right? What you should be doing, right, when you post to, whether it be TikTok or YouTube, you should be posting your same content right here on Bitcoin MYK. Because what that's going to do is going to protect you in events like this by spreading out that influence and users on other platforms. So in the event things like this happen, you're protected. You're owning this network. You're protected to the degree that you can make decisions on your freedom of speech. It's not down to Mark Zuckerberg. It's not down to Elon Musk, because make no mistake about it, those platforms are the same platforms and they're doing the same things, right? And although they might come up and they might say, well, we're making changes here and there, these platforms are still run by a board of directors and an owner and CEOs and a management team, right? They're not run by you, nor is your data controlled by you. So when decisions get made, you're going to be the person left holding the bag, and you're going to be the person suffering. What you should be doing, right, is already moving your content over to sites like Bitcoin MYK that we created for this exact purpose, without excuse, because you've already had so many chances with what can go wrong on these platforms. You need to be diversifying as much as you can, right? And what's cool about Bitcoin MYK, you get paid in our cryptocurrency token for everything you do, right? You get to own this network, and you get to exchange those tokens for some of your bigger cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and such, right? And that helps to protect you, right? That helps you to protect you from situations like this. Now, if you don't act and you do nothing, you don't take it serious, what's going to happen down the road? Several years down the road, you're going to find yourself in the same situation, right? And each time you do that, it's going to get worse and worse. To the point where eventually you're not going to have any way to save your content, your influence, your user base, your revenues, and so on, right? So jobs are serious business, people. You know, like the predictions we made years ago, this is the landscape of the future. People are going to be sitting home, making a living on social media. And when I say people, I don't mean just the influencers, the people with the talent who create this stuff. I'm talking about you, the viewers, as well. Because you, the viewers, like when you come on something like Bitcoin MYK, just by looking at their videos, just by liking their content and posts and doing these things and that, you're earning as well, right? So in a situation, in a dystopian situation, which, make no mistake about it, can happen, right? We just saw less than several months ago, the port strike workers who were concerned about automation and losing their jobs, the people who are responsible for getting all our medicine in at the ports, getting all our the food and beverages we need to survive, right? And they were willing to let us die by stopping these goods from coming in, right? For us to stop automation from taking their jobs, which can't happen, right? No civilization will hold up technology. No business will stop technology from spreading to protect your job when your job's time is now on the chopping block, right? That job's going to go, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it, right? But some of those people may find themselves having to seek other ways to make a living, right? And as we keep going forward into the future, it's going to get even more sophisticated, complicated on what we term as work, right? As I said, people here on this site, as you can see, they're making money when they log in, updating their profiles, visiting profiles from other users and members. We call it the proof of participation model. It is your human energy creating the cryptocurrency. Now, we predicted years ago this is what the landscape would look like. Unfortunately, people only respond at the precipice. How do we know this? Look at the TikTok users. Look at you all who use TikTok, right? You knew this day would come, yet you're left holding the bag. You're hoping Donald Trump will stop the ban. Donald Trump likely won't stop the ban because Donald Trump understands what they believe to be a national security threat from China. They're not probably going to stop it, right? And so they're hoping somebody will buy it. Now, of course, Elon Musk, he bought Twitter, but if we recall, that deal didn't go well. He believed he paid too much. He ended up paying $44 billion. People thought it was a lot cheaper than that. He's been operating in the negative, I believe. And so it's not the best business decision for a lot of people. I don't know if TikTok will be different. Maybe it will. But it doesn't seem like things worked out well for Elon Musk and his purchase of Twitter, at least not initially. And I'm not 100% up to speed on what's happening now. Maybe things are going well for him now, but whoever is in line to buy TikTok, they're either going to have to be able to take those risks, or it's not going to be bought by an American who's going to keep up those regulations and such, right? So it's a lot of things going on. If you're a TikTok user and you're kind of in limbo now, it is time to start making decisions that are for the betterment of your future on these social media platforms. And that's protecting your content, your data, your revenue, right? And you got to do that by building up other social networks. And that is another prediction we made, that these monopolies that have existed in social media, the major 2 or 3, in the future, that's going to end. It's going to go back to looking like it looked when social media companies first began. And that was, as many of you all recall, dozens of them vying for position, right? It might have was 20, 30 of them that were, at a time, right? That you used and had to choose from. Now we're probably down to 2 or 3. We're going back to those days because everybody's going to be on social media, doing their businesses, doing their remote work, owning these social. You're going to literally own these companies and share in dividends and money from billion-dollar social networks, right? And that's what Bitcoin MYK is all about, right? That's what the future's going to look like, no doubt about it. But what do you get left behind in it, right? And whether you become a victim, right, of these privately owned social networks It's going to be up to you, right? And the earlier you start with something like this, the better off you're going to be, right? Because you're going to be, early on in, so to speak. And of course, a lot of times when you're early in, there's going to be a lot of more opportunity as the value jumps up and you get your cryptocurrency and participation in these networks, so to speak, right? So those are all things, guys, you seriously need to consider. I hope everything works out well for you all who've depended on TikTok. People have made a lot of money on TikTok. Millions of dollars. Their bills. Some people have just purchased homes and they depend on their revenue from TikTok, right? And so they've been under a lot of stress. Like I said, it's very serious, right? When I talk about Bitcoin, MYK, social media, when I talk about the importance of this, people haven't taken it serious, right? We don't get the users or the viewership nowhere near what we should get in a subject and a topic as important as this. Like I said, guys, this is as important as nuclear proliferation, is as important as the job economy. It is as important as censorship, all that stuff, right? It is ranked up there, right? Because potentially we're going to live in a world where robots are going to do almost everything. And you're seeing hints of that now. It's hard to not get out of, it was difficult to get out of 2024. And as you can see, 2025 is starting out. It's called the year of the robots, right? Because robots are going to be doing everything, including your job, right? And that is a fact. But take it serious, guys. Join Bitcoin MYK today, especially if you're on TikTok, because all what's going to happen, even if you dodge the bullet on TikTok, you're going to be faced with this again. Although, unfortunately, sorry to say, I don't think you're going to dodge the bullet. I think the United States government is going to consider TikTok a national security threat based on the information I just imparted to you all, and that is data powering super AIs and intelligence. We're talking about a computer that could be so sophisticated, it could tell you how to wipe out an enemy in 5 minutes. It can tell you how to cripple an enemy and think on levels that they've never thought before. And that is the dangers of data and what happens if a person gets a leg up in this artificial intelligence race, right? BitcoinMYK.com. Register today without delay. It only takes 30 seconds. Don't make excuses and go forward into a future where you're going to find yourself out in the cold, in the rain, holding the bag, when you can already be owning a social network, a member of the community, building up, having governance in that model. Like all social media networks should have been run from the very beginning. They should not run private business like they do, private corporations with a board of directors making all the decisions. Social network platforms were always meant to be owned and run by the people, the community, right? It is as natural to it as air is a human breathing air. And that's how we should be looking at it. So take Bitcoin MYK serious. I know a lot of you watch the channel and you go, oh, what's this crypto thing, Bitcoin MYK? It's nothing important. The reason that the channel is 90% Bitcoin MYK is because the subject matter is that important, right? But that's all I got to say in this video, guys. Take it serious. Don't forget to like the videos. Don't forget to share videos like this. That is important, especially across TikTok. And that's all I want to say. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.